Hello and welcome to the Sonic Cinema Podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle. Thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com as well as the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel. Click subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. YouTube is a good one to hit at. You can also get quick takes as well as other smaller interviews. But wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, it is always appreciated. You can also check us out at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. The Oscars are coming up. I'm still trying to go through all the Atlanta Film Festival and Dragon Con material. And hopefully we'll get a couple of series for Leaving the Collection and Life Soundtrack coming up here shortly. But that is at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. So October is typically a month where we go horror. The first episode out of the gate this month was for Mel Gibson's Braveheart, which if you're a historian or if you are just not a fan of Mel Gibson, that could kind of be considered a horror. But the fact of the matter is, it's like this year, horror is just not so much on the agenda this year for the Sonic Cinema podcast. And part of it is because of the delay we had earlier in the year and having to catch up with episodes since then. But I think we found a decent alternative to it. And it's kind of horror related because this particular story has been told in a variety of ways, and it almost always has an ability to capture the fear of what humanity would have happened if aliens truly did come to Earth. I am talking about the iconic H.G. Wells story, The War of the Worlds. Similar to what we did a couple of years ago with Bram Stoker's Dracula, my guest today, Phil Fasso, is going to join me on a discussion through some of the iterations of Wells's story over the years, and just kind of the ways in which this story has been twisted and turned around in different hands over the years. And Phil, it, as always, is a great pleasure to talk to you.
Brian, as always, it is a great pleasure to be on Sonic Cinema. This is my first appearance this year, so it's a little late this time around, but I'm more than happy to join you. And I think that there is a lot of stuff to dig in on with War of the Worlds, the novel, the Orson Welles coverage back in 1938 on the radio, and 3 different movie adaptations. So we got our books full today.
We do, and your first appearance of the year, but not your last. We will have Phil back on later on in the year to talk about another series of movies that taps into certain fears that at least American audiences have a tendency to do, but through a different perspective. But that's for a different episode. Let us talk about War of the Worlds. And obviously this started as a story by H.G. Wells, the great sci-fi writer. Start off as a series that was published as a kind of series going on, and then became a novel. And this has been adapted. I was looking on Wikipedia shortly after we started to talk about doing this episode, and there are so many freaking adaptations of this. It's just I had no idea so many existed. Now, I mean, obviously there are variations of this. I think one of the most famous of which is Roland Emmerich's Independence Day, which is very clearly inspired by War of the Worlds in a lot of ways. But
to the point of being a flat-out ripoff at several points.
Yes, but also I will say probably one of the more entertaining ripoffs of the And certainly more entertaining than at least one of the films we're going to be talking about today. That's an actual alleged adaptation of this story. But the thing, one of the things I think was so interesting about this as we were talking about doing this is that I like the idea that there are so many different adaptations of this, and you cannot talk about War of the Worlds in pop culture without obviously discussing the famous 1938 radio broadcast by Orson Welles in the Mercury Theater, which was presented around Halloween, if I remember correctly. So there you go. There's your horror connection for October. And it's funny because of the fact that I listened to that for the first time 20 years ago in preparation for Spielberg's 2005 film, which we will talk about. And one of the things that I am so... the thing is, the concept of radio play, especially the concept of that type of radio play, there's not really a way to do what Wells and the Mercury Theater did with that now. Like, yes, you can do podcast adaptations radio plays of, like, H.G. Wells' story. It's not going to have the same impact, though, because with television, with the internet, with everything else, there's so much media out there now, you would never have the type of reaction that Wells was able to elicit in his presentation of this story. And it's absolutely breathtaking to listen to it. It's an hour long, and it's riveting because of the fact that you see how he builds the story out just to get the anxieties of the listeners more and more out there as it builds on.
Part of what I found fascinating, because I had listened to it years and years ago, I'm not even sure where I found it or why I did, but I did very much enjoy it. When I listened to it recently, a few weeks ago, I think that part of the reason that people thought it was real and part of the reason that it worked so well was that it's playing like it's an interruption of an actual program.
Yes.
So it's so funny. I kept, like, in the first 8 minutes or so, there's like 3 cutbacks to this big band. I found the name of the band really funny. I can't remember what it is now. But there's 3 cutbacks. So it's like, here's Charles Lindbergh and his big band orchestra. And then they cut into that like 3 separate times. But they keep cutting back to that big band before it actually really starts to dig into the story.
Yeah.
So the setup is perfect because if you were listening to radio back in the 30s, you probably come across programs like that.
Right.
There's a live hour of a big band playing in Carnegie Hall, wherever in New York City. And the fact that this, and it builds. So you get this, first off, you get this, oh, we're seeing these strange lights or whatever, and then all of a sudden it cuts back to the band, and then it cuts back, and okay, well now we've seen that this is something from, it's a little more, and it gets more in depth before it starts rolling straight into the story.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard, actually I read a couple articles on this a couple weeks ago after I listened to it again. There is a great amount of debate over whether Orson Welles actually planned this to be this big controversy-stirring thing, or if he just fell into it. I don't know which is which because there are arguments on both sides. Well, obviously, a very bright guy, and if that was his intent, it was a genius stroke. If it wasn't his intent, it's still a genius stroke. The thing is, I didn't realize that the feedback was so negative. So there were reports of people thinking that we were actually getting invaded, so they committed suicide because they were freaking out about aliens. people were ready to rush out into the streets in panic, and people leaving work early to try to get home to their families. All this chaos over this radio program.
Yeah. No, I don't remember necessarily hearing that type of that type of backlash about that type of feedback about it in terms of people actually killing themselves because they thought aliens were invading. But to your question about Wells, I think, I mean, he was definitely enough of a showman. He was definitely somebody who courted controversy to the point where I do think and I mean, you listen to the structure of the way he presents the story. Of course, they're going to do that and expect some people to think, "Oh my God, this is actually happening."
And the thing back then is that, you mentioned earlier that can never happen today.
No.
But we really have to go back almost 100 years and look at what media was like at that time.
Yeah.
There were people who saw Frankenstein in 1931 and were fainting when they saw, Boris Karloff show up on the screen for the first time as the monster.
Yeah.
Not only that, I mean, obviously it was like a more conservative, more reserved time on what you could do, and what was horrifying obviously has changed over the last almost 100 years, like I said. But also, the channels for entertainment and the channels for news were very narrow back then. There was no internet. There was no podcast. I don't even think you had Did you have television in 1938? If so, it wasn't in every home, right?
No, it wasn't in every home by then. I feel like it was probably just getting going. But to your point, yeah, it wouldn't have been in every home. It still would have been very new, but also it would have been limited. You wouldn't have had dozens upon dozens of channels. It would have just been a few basic channels.
No. Brian, when I was a kid I was born in 1972. So when I was a kid in the late 70s, early 80s, we had 3 channels. You had ABC, NBC, and CBS. And then if you wanted to go out on a limb, you could flip out to channel 13 and get PBS.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I originally had people. I can't even imagine. Like my nephew just turned 21 last month. I can't even imagine him understanding that if I were to explain it to him.
No, it's
that's in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Go back 35, 40 years before that to when Wells was presenting this, and I could see people. I mean, it's astounding to believe. Like, if you were looking at this from a modern lens, you'd say, "How the fuck did anybody fall for that?"
Yeah.
But if you put it in that context, and you think the 1930s, and you think that. You think that, 1938, that's around the rise of the Third Reich, isn't it? Like, that's along the same lines of that timeline.
Well, I mean, the Third Reich would have already been, the Third Reich Nazi Party would have already been in control at that point, and World War I is a year later. But, I mean, certainly the Nazis were already in power, and we already not long after this you have Kristallnacht, and you really do start to see the terrible things that are going to take over Europe over the next few years start to take hold. So, and you also have to take this into the context of the fact that it's during the Great Depression.
Yes, it is.
Yes, we're starting to come out of it, but at the same time, there's still a lot of anxiety about the direction of this country. And so the idea that, oh my God, this otherworldly thing is happening, and it may be a matter of, wow, this is going to this is going to impact us, is just really going to, it's hard to imagine at that point. But the fact of the matter is, it's like that was part of Welles' genius. And so I'm sure, I think to a certain extent, I think the showman in him certainly thought, oh, this will be great because people coming in the middle of this are going to think this is actually happening. But I certainly don't think he anticipated just quite the backlash that it would have towards it. I really don't think so.
No, I don't think that at all. And if you want to take it back about 40 years before Wells, so I read the novel, it has to be 20 years ago, and I actually downloaded Wells' entire collection, not Orson Welles, H.G. Wells' entire collection. It's like $3 on Kindle, and I was trying to get to it. I didn't have time to reread the novel, but I did do some research on the novel as well. So, looking back at what we're talking about with Nazi Germany and the Great Depression and all what's going on at the time, if you go back 40 years earlier, I found out that the reason that Wells wrote this novel was because Great Britain had invaded Tasmania at that point. And his thing was taking it from the view of the Tasmanians, these people living a quote-unquote simpler life, being invaded by this overwhelming military force, you know, an alien invasion. If you want to look at alien as in one of its connotations as foreign, right?
Right.
And he's looking at this from the lens of the Tasmanians. That hey, we're just doing our thing here, and in comes this British invasion with all these guns and all the stuff we've never seen before. You know?
Yeah.
So it all plays into the timing with Wells. I don't think that Wells could have done that at a better time than 1938. It was, I think, a day or two before Halloween.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on the anniversary of it in a couple weeks from now. And look, we've talked about Wells. We talked about him when we talked about Joseph Cotton. We got into it and we talked about him with The Third Man and all that.
Yeah.
Say what you want about his catalog. I told you back then, I am not a fan of Citizen Kane, but Wells was a genius.
Yeah.
Wells was brilliant when it came to not only being a filmmaker and the guy who ran the Mercury Theater, but a showman and a guy who knew how to run a production. Mm-hmm. And listening to that 38 broadcast a couple weeks ago when I did again for the second time, you know, showmanship is all over that, and that's got Wells' fingerprints all over it. And if you know what Wells is and what he was about, Orson Welles, he knew how to run a production, and that is great production. And he probably didn't get he probably did not intend to get the backlash, like you said, but he certainly aimed to get a reaction.
Yes.
And, he had a reaction in spades, that's for sure.
Oh no, absolutely. And I mean, you know, you listen, you hear about him, and you hear about some of the productions that he put on the stage, you know, with black actors at a time as racist as this country's ever been. And then you look at what he did with Citizen Kane, which, yes, it isn't even my favorite Orson Welles movie. That's Touch of Evil. But you look at the fact that he took his shot, his first time out, at one of the great media barons in American history at that time, in William Randolph Hearst. Not great in the sense that he was a great person, but great in the sense that he's as powerful as anybody ever was.
Yep.
In that role. And the fact that he was able to do what he did, and now granted, Hollywood clapped back at him hard because he never had that type of freedom again, but he continued to push the envelope and make great films. I mean, you can listen to my discussion with Darren Lundberg about Wells, and you can read my thoughts on the soundtrack for Touch of Evil on Sonic Cinema. And the fact of the matter is, and again, to your point with our discussion on Joseph Cotton and The Third Man, and the fact of the matter is, it's like Wells was somebody who, he was a singular showman. He was as much of a showman as any film artist had ever been at that point. And honestly, even to this day is still one of the great showmen. I mean, you look at the works, you look at the careers of people like Steven Spielberg and Christopher Nolan, and they are people who stand on the shoulders of what Wells did, for better or worse. And I mean, that is how it is.
You wouldn't have filmmaking on the technical level. You wouldn't have filmmaking on the auteur level. You wouldn't have filmmaking on the sheer power of filmmaking without Orson Welles.
No.
He was a true paradox of the industry early, and it's sad what became of his career, because he was, like you said, never given, like, so many of his films, he'd put them out and then they'd get butchered and massacred and then reset and recut and this and that. Like, he never really got to present his vision unfiltered like he did in Citizen Kane again. Yeah. And tying it back to, what we're talking about today, like, whatever medium he was using for entertainment, he could do it. He could do it on stage, he could do it on film, and he can damn well do it on radio, because people thought this was real.
Yeah, I know. No, and the thing is, it's like you listen to it, and like, intellectually speaking, you listen to it and you realize it's like, oh, okay, this is, I see where he's going with this as a storyteller. I see where he's going with this in terms of production. But at the same time, even you have to a certain extent, do a double take at some of the choices he makes and go, wait a minute, did he just do that? It's like, what's going on? I can see why people fell for it. I mean, I really can. It's hard not to see that he very much anticipated a reaction, and he knew how to elicit it.
100%.
Yeah. And, it's funny because of the fact that it's interesting that, like, by this point, in 1938, like, the movies were about 40 years old. Like, silent films, the first narratives and first films were in the 1890s. And so, you had this silent era up until the mid to late 20s. And then now you're about a decade into the talkie era. But it's funny because it would take 15 more years before a filmmaker decided to adapt this story for film. The 1953 Byron Haskins film, in Technicolor, is the first film adaptation of The War of the Worlds. And to a certain extent, I asked you, and to a certain extent, I did ask you, it's like, I wonder why it took, do you think, and you and I basically agreed that the reason this was waiting, that nobody was going to adapt this beforehand, was obviously the technology, because special effects were not what special effects were by the 50s, and with the acceleration of science fiction, fantasy in terms of that type of genre of filmmaking, we didn't have that until the 1950s. So obviously the technology was a bigger part of it. And really, there's not really, I can't think of a filmmaker who would have been able to put their stamp on it quite like Wells did. And there's a part of me that does wonder if the impact of Wells' radio broadcast is also part of the reason why it was another 15 years until we got a War of the Worlds on the big screen.
So you think it would have been a little too hot to touch for a while and needed to cool down?
Yeah.
I can understand that. My big thing is, I'm sure you've seen it. If you haven't seen the full thing, you've seen the clip. You know, there's that silent clip of the man in the moon where you see the guy. It's clearly a guy's face put through a fucking through a black screen, and he looks like he's painted up like the moon.
Yeah.
And then you see the rocket hit, and it hits him in the eye. You know.
I've watched A Trip to the Moon. Yes. Méliès. Yes. I watched it because of Hugo.
So if you've seen that, I mean, that's what you would have had if this would have been made in the silent era a couple of years after it came out.
Yeah.
If you would have done this in 38, like, you're not talking about anything near what you get in the 1953 version, which is gorgeous, by the way. It's a really gorgeous film to look at. The special effects are really impressive. But on a technical level, you really needed to wait till the 50s to do this. Otherwise, you would have gotten on. It would have been goofy and silly, and it wouldn't have had the impact. Now, my thing is that even in the 50s, like, this is, you mentioned the director, but this is really George Pal's baby.
Yeah.
So George Pal is the reason that this movie exists and looks like it does. And he hired and put all the right people in place. And even with the technology in the 50s, the funny thing is, one of the characters at one time mentions the tripod legs.
Yeah.
Which are really not in this version at all. They're more standard spaceships. And that is actually a limitation I read, that they tried to make the tripod legs work with this because they're iconic right out of the novel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're in the novel. And they're in future incarnations, including the other two films we're going to talk about. But even with the special effects wizardry and the technical color and all that, they couldn't get the tripod legs to work, so they just dropped them and made them more standard spaceships.
Yeah.
But lucky for us, Brian, we get several scenes out of Square Dance to replace the lack of that.
You know, in the thing...
Thank filmmaking gods that we get Square Dance here.
So, I mean, here's... I think you have a valid point about that. So here's what we'll say about that. I mean, you are right. The visual effects in this movie are fantastic. I mean, it's funny because I watched this last month as part of repertory review. I didn't even think about the fact that they talk about tripods, but you never actually see tripods in the legs in the actual movie. But because of the fact that the colors are just so beautiful, the fact that the visual effects are just so strong, you don't even think about it. But okay, so you were talking about the several scenes in the Square Dance. I think that is a fair hit. One of the things I will say, first of all, I like the fact that this movie is short. It's like 85 minutes. Yeah. It's not a long movie. And when it comes to 1950s science fiction, the shorter the better. Because of the fact that, these movies were very much more about spectacle than and trying to show people things that they hadn't seen before in movies. And you don't need to... The time for 2-hour-long science fiction movies was not this time. That would happen in the 60s. But, I mean, sometimes in the 50s, but mostly in the 60s. So, one of the things that I think is so striking, we talked about the context of the Welles book as well as the Orson Welles radio play, in terms of the context in which, in history, that those movies were made. We sort of talked about the fact that, you couldn't really do I think the only science fiction film before this that really even points to a possibility of this type of movie being made is maybe Metropolis, but even that's not the same type of science fiction you're doing in this.
Sure, I'd agree with that. Absolutely.
But you look at a particular time, this is 1953. This is early in the 50s. This is this is a movie that is coming out as the Cold War is starting between the United States and Russia. So that is the context for this movie's creation, and you really do feel that. Like you do feel like, and you're talking about the square dance scene. The thing that I like about this, one of the things that I really do enjoy about this movie, even if it's inherently ridiculous how much we spend at this square dance, is that it did try to balance the personal and regular people point of views of these events versus just fighting back the invasion. You know, the military is a big part of this. Obviously, the military part is a big part of this, but it's more about the people living this and surviving this. That point of view is what matters. And I listened to the audiobook of the Welles novel this past week, and one of the things I do appreciate about this, and one of the things I appreciate about at least one other of the adaptations we're going to talk about, is the fact that it is focused more on normal people trying to survive these events than the military fighting back. I do like that, and I think it's a nice constant that so many filmmakers, so many storytellers, and you get in the Welles radio play as well, they don't forget that. They don't forget that key aspect of the Welles novel, and I think that's one of the strongest aspects of why this story is progressed as much as it has in terms of continuing to endure as something that people go back to.
And I would say that the Spielberg Tom Cruise version of 2005 takes the same angle but does it a lot better.
Yes. We will talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. What I do want to say here, and you and I were talking about this. We were chatting, messaging each other while I was watching the movie, and you said exactly what I was thinking. This 1953 version is so oddly paced.
Yeah.
It is bizarre. So here's the thing, right? This meteor lands. And again, actually, you know what? Let's start at the very beginning. The voiceover, right?
Yeah.
So this and the 2005 version both have a voiceover. And it's only at the beginning and it's only at the end. Mm-hmm. And I'll talk about why I think it's at the end when we get to that a little further along in our discussion of the 1953 version here.
Yeah.
Okay? So we get this voice saying, hey, Mars is inhabitable now, and the Martians have decided that they need to move along, and they tried Jupiter, it didn't work, Saturn's got too many gases, Uranus and Pluto too far out, so they picked good old Earth, right?
Yeah.
So then you're being told that we're about to be invaded. And the way they set up the visuals with the different planets and all that is really cool and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And again, if you're ever going to watch this movie, you will appreciate how good looking a 50s movie can look when in the right hands.
Yes.
So, you all of a sudden see the meteor and it's landing in this part of California. And then there's 3 doctors that are out fishing. One of them's our main protagonist here.
Yeah.
And then you meet the town priest and you meet the priest's daughter who becomes a big part of this. And you meet a bunch of the townies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And they all come out and the scientist comes and then when he meets the girl, it's hysterical. Because the girl is like, oh, this big time, she's talking to the big time doctor. Oh, this big time scientist. Oh, this big time scientist is going to come, and I'm so excited to meet him, and blah blah blah. She doesn't notice it's him. So then he points it out. She says to him, oh, well, you were wearing glasses and didn't have a beard. Now he's got like the lightest 5 o'clock shadow I've ever seen. So I'm thinking that maybe this guy has the Clark Kent Superman thing going on. When he has his glasses on, he's a totally different human being, maybe, right? So then they're all goofing around, and one of them's like, "Oh, this is going to be a big roadside attraction. We'll be able to charge 10 cents per car to view it, or whatever." They're thinking, "Oh, this is going to be an anomaly. Meteor lands in our backyard here in town. We're going to be great. Let's go to the square dance, right?" So they go to the square dance, and there's scenes going back and forth, and then they start to lay it in. So there's three guys waiting there. And those poor three guys get blasted because they try talking to the alien once the ship pops up. And I understand that you're trying to make these people look like everyday townspeople. I just think that the fact that it's at a square dance puts a whole just weird tone on it.
Yeah.
That's certainly a choice. It's not the choice I would have made. I wasn't the writer or the director on the film, mind you, but it's a choice.
Yeah.
So that gets us back where all of a sudden all the watches are dying, and everything's like, oh, my watch died. Oh, everyone's watch died. So that brings them back to the spot where the ship has now started to expand from the meteor, and you get really the way they do it is cool. It's pretty much the way Wells described it in the novel, that it's this beaming eye coming out of this like neck thing with a headpiece of the eye.
Yeah.
But it's only then that the story starts really rolling. And when it starts rolling, like, I'm surprised that this passed the Hays Code, because people are dying right and fucking left in this thing, Brian. There is a lot of devastation and death in this. I did not, because I'd seen this movie when I was a kid. I saw all these movies when I was a kid. I did not expect this to have the death toll it did. Like at one point I think they drop a hydrogen bomb on Los Angeles, don't they?
I think you're right. Yeah.
They drop an A bomb on a U.S. city to try to kill these things.
Yeah.
And even that doesn't work.
No.
It's crazy though. And I'll get into that in the 2005 version, because there's some shocking stuff there too. But for the early 1950s, like, this is it's really intense.
Yeah, you're right about the. I didn't even think about the fact that the Hays Code was still in effect at this time. That didn't even occur to me, because you're right. There is a lot of spectacle in terms of violence in this movie. Now, obviously, we will talk about Spielberg's version, which certainly goes further than this one does, but in that respect, in some pretty shocking ways, actually. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, no, you're right. And I wonder if part of that is because of the fact that this is very much a genre film. They were able to get away with it a little bit more than, and on top of that, it's a movie in which the humanity wins. I mean, humanity wins by technicality in the end. I mean, that's one of the that is one of the big kind of like what the F turns we get in this. In this story is the fact that it's the fact that, like, these microorganisms that cause diseases that we've become mostly accustomed to is ultimately what kills the aliens in most of these adaptations. And so and even in the original novel. And so I do wonder if that's part of it, is because of the fact that it is a genre film and it's not trying to be realistic. I wonder if there was a little bit more leeway to that. But the fact of the matter is, by the 50s, the Hays Code was starting to lose its luster anyway. I mean, there were more filmmakers who were trying to challenge it over the years anyway. So, yeah.
So while we're on the subject of, because you just brought it up, while we're on the subject of how these things die, right? So I remember reading the novel, and I don't think that I remembered when I read the novel 20, 25 years ago, whatever it was. I don't think I remembered at that point seeing this movie.
Yeah.
Because when I got to the end, and I'm like, and the novel is really like, the thing with this version and the 2005 version that I love is that they're both like, these are really oppressive visions. And if these don't manage to die because common diseases and molecules and stuff are wiping them out, like this is the end of the planet, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's not going to be any humanity left if these things continue on the path they're going. And I think that this and the Tom Cruise version both take place within like a week.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically.
Very quickly. And, it's kind of creepy when you get the whole. You hear in this version and you get notes of it in the other version that this is not just an isolated event in this one California town or, the city that Tom Cruise is living in. This is all of a sudden, these things are landing everywhere.
But it's not California. It's, well, okay, you're talking about the 50s one. Well, I mean, yeah, because the Tom Cruise one, he's in Jersey, basically.
Oh, it's Jersey, okay.
Yeah.
Because I know that they're trying to get to Boston, and he keeps talking about New York baseball teams, probably because Jersey doesn't have any pro teams. So I was really confused because I spent a good portion of my life living in Queens and going to Manhattan and the boroughs, and like, this doesn't look like anything I'm familiar with, but I could see that being a Jersey town right outside.
Yeah.
In the 53 version, it's California.
Yeah, very much so.
I don't know which town it is, but it's some town outside of, in Southern California, I believe. So here's the thing, all right? When you get to the end of the 50s version, it's really good the way they do it too. Like I can't impress upon people listening to this how great these visuals are. And if you have any appreciation for beautiful film, even where terrible, oppressive things are happening, by all means, watch the 1953 version of this film. It's gorgeous. But the thing I want to say is that all of a sudden they're in this church and you see the city's burning and they're wiping these things out. And all of a sudden, one of the ships just starts to descend, right?
Yeah.
And it hits the ground, and then the door opens, and one of the little, it's a really cool look, and I think this is right out of Welles' novel, too. It's like the three fingers with the suction cups, like the arm comes down, and then it kind of droops, right?
Yeah.
So knowing how the novel is and knowing that was going on, I'm saying, okay, the disease has gotten to them. The disease is they can't live in this environment because we have, as a species, thousands of years of building up tolerances and resistances to viruses and, the common cold and all that. These things don't.
Yeah.
But if you are watching this and you don't have that and you don't know the novel and you don't have that knowledge that disease is killing these things, I'm thinking that I probably would have thought, wow, these things are just shitty drivers. Like, they can't keep these ships going straight. No, they're shitty drivers. Because you need that narration at the end to explain it, and they do the same thing in the Cruise version, right?
Yeah.
Where they do that at the end. And we'll talk about that, because I actually think that this version is better than the 2005 version. I don't know why they got Morgan. I guess because Morgan Freeman was narrating everything in 2005.
I mean, March of the Penguins was a couple weeks after this one. The Cruise one was released, so yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, it would have been like, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like Morgan Freeman had narrated a bunch of different movies. I mean, he had narrated Shawshank. He'd narrated, I think, $1 Million Baby. He had narrated a ton at that time. So
but
yeah,
he was acting as a character in those movies. He
Yeah.
also narrated that shitty remake of Conan, the Barbarian, with what's his face,
Momoa?
Yeah. So I understand that Morgan Freeman was the go-to narration guy, but it's so just ill-fitting hearing his voice at that point. But that's just the personal squabble. Anyway, I'm saying, and I don't know if you disagree with me on this, that if you don't have that narration at the end of this movie telling you why these things suddenly are not functioning anymore, why they're dying out, you are having no idea why this happened.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're not familiar with the novel.
100%, right?
No,
Yep.
I mean, and the thing is, it's like in the radio play, they. I mean, it's almost exactly the exact same closing sentences, and
Yeah.
at least 3 of the 4 we're talking about. Like it's basically same at the end of the Wells play, it's same at the end of this, it's same at the end of the Spielberg movie.
Yep.
But no, you're absolutely right. You need that context in order for it to make sense.
Because otherwise, you say to yourself, are these things? I would be if it ended without that narration. I'd have several questions. My first would be: is this just a local thing where these things are crashing, or is this all over the planet where they've
Yeah.
set up shop? Right? Have humans really survived this, or is this just a fallback for the moment? This is a temporary setback for the aliens, and we're ending on this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm normally not for narration in movies unless it's necessary for context.
Yeah.
This is a perfect example where you need the context, and I can justify having the narration on there.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. And
what the hell just happened? You know?
no, you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the genius things about Wells is the original H.G. Wells is writing is the fact that he wrote that context in, and he does in the way he tells that story. It's very much a POV story with the guy and his brother, and we don't necessarily know what's going on. We know that there's large scale invasion, but we don't know how large. Is it just England? Is it just Europe? What's the context for here? And no, the fact that we do not know is a big part of what makes that so effective. And I think especially in the Spielberg one, I think there are ways in which he and David Koepp adapt it in a way that holds true to that, but at the same time they also acknowledge that there's going to be it's got to be a different type of story. You've got to have certain context in this one that you're not necessarily going to have otherwise. And you're going to, just based on the fact that technology is wildly different.
Sure. And that goes back to what you were just saying about in the novel, not knowing if this is a localized event, if it's just Europe, if it's the world. That ties into what we were talking about earlier, because you don't have a global communication system really at that point that works at any kind of speed.
No.
And with that kind of chaos going on, with cities burning and these things dropping all over the planet, you wouldn't probably be able to get that sort of globalized contact. You'd be able to find out if this was, happening just in England, it was happening across the world,
Yeah.
So I think that's another cool aspect. Like, Wells was way ahead of his time. And I know we talked about the lousy, terrible, awful, never watch this if you haven't seen it, 1990s version of Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
But if you decided to read that novel, there's all kinds of stuff about science and vivisection and things that are going on at the time. He was very much of his time because he's addressing stuff that's happening at the moment and concerns of Britain at the time, or his personal concerns, like in this case. You all right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, he's talking about stuff that's certainly, topical in Britain at the time, but his vision is so far ahead of his time. It's crazy, Brian.
Yeah.
Well, the best, I just want to say this before you comment on that. The best science fiction writers are really visionaries. They're like clairvoyants with seeing the path that things are going to go,
Yeah, and unfortunately, the worst people, the richest people often take them as, oh, this is an idea that we should do, as opposed to, oh, this is something we should be cautious of. But
Yep.
no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you even think about The Time Machine, which I've not read the novel, but the fact of the matter is, it's like there's very much commentary on class, which Britain is very much a class conscious society. And so, I mean, yeah, you definitely have aspects of that. And no, I mean, H.G. Wells was a very singular writer in that respect. And I mean, that's one of the things I was riveted listening to. War of the Worlds, and it was fantastic. It does make me want to go back and listen to Island of Dr. Moreau and The Time Machine and to really get into his work a bit more. And, we talked about this. It's like, this is, if you think about the 1953 film is kind of ground zero for disaster films.
Sure.
And and the thing is, it's like, you look at it compared to a lot of other stories, not just Independence Day, but like, but basically in general, you look at a lot of other Roland Emmerich movies. You even look at some of the Godzilla movies that Toho would put out in the next few years. And the fact of the matter is, it's like they do very much go off of the template that Wells did in terms of his structure for how these types of stories unfold, and they still unfold the exact same way.
No, and I think that I'm glad that you mentioned Godzilla and the 1950s, because you've had sci-fi movies basically since the beginning. Like you mentioned Metropolis, and we talked about A Trip to the Moon, but the 1950s was certainly the golden age for American filmmakers with sci-fi, and like you said, it expanded beyond that to world filmmaking as far as Toho goes. Like you had all kinds of stuff about, like all the giant bug movies. Them is by far the best of them with the giant ants, and the fact that they physically constructed all these giant ants it's just glorious to watch, even in black and white. But yeah, giant bugs and Godzilla all emanating from fears of radiation and the bomb.
Yeah.
You have stuff like Invasion of Body Snatchers and the alien films, the alien invasion films. Hey, you know what? Are we safe in America? Are we being, invaded? Are we being backdoor invaded? Because you never know if a communist is going to be living next door to you.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, think about Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was either either anxiety about the atomic bomb or anxiety about communism. It was one of those. It was one of those two. And I mean, we need to talking about the Byron Haskins film. We need to do an episode about 50s sci-fi at some point, because of the fact that it's like we really haven't touched on that a lot in this podcast, and I want to rectify that. Yeah,
so, as far as movie versions of alien invasions go, the 1953 one is one of the better ones of the time.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
As far as the three movies, and I'll exclude the Orson Welles because that was a radio cast. As far as the three movies go, I would definitely place it in the middle.
Yes.
When we get to the one from this year, we'll see how that is basically the toilet version of this story. But yeah, I hadn't seen, I think I told you this, and I definitely told my sister this. I'd seen, I think, the entire Spielberg movie in pieces over the years, but I had never seen it together from beginning to end. And when I sat down and watched it, I'm like, oh my God, this is horrifying. This is stuff. But yeah, as far as the 53 version goes, it's definitely a solid watch. It's got its issues. It's got its square dancing. Okay, you may be a fan of square dancing, uh, but you're right. Definitely establishing it as a people story, not just an alien story at that
Yeah.
point. Which the 2005 version does as well. And I did want to mention one more thing that the Wells. I think Wells was. I think Wells was still alive. He might have been still alive when they made this the War of the Worlds. No, I think it was he was alive when they made the first version of Island of Dr. Moreau, which is the Island of Lost Souls, and he hated it. So he and his estate were very specific about who they were going to sell the rights to for future movies.
Right.
I don't remember if he was alive at that point, but regardless, whether he was alive or it was his estate, the Wells camp was so impressed with this movie that they gave George Powell the rights to make the Time Machine, the first version of the Time Machine, which he made, I think, 5 or 6 years later.
Okay.
So
it was the estate because Wells passed away in August of 1946.
Okay.
So yeah.
So the estate, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. But this was a very successful version, both artistically and as financially as well. So
yeah,
that led Powell to go ahead, and some of the stuff in the Time Machine is probably going to come across as goofy today, but it's also a very solid, well-made film with some glorious visuals. You know?
Yeah. No, absolutely, and I haven't seen the first adaptation of the Time Machine in a while, so that's something I want to get to at some point. But yeah, we move on from the 1950s movie to 2005, and you've started to talk about Spielberg. We've talked about Spielberg's film to a certain extent throughout this episode, and comparing it to 1950s film. The thing that here's the thing. I mean, I am on record as Spielberg being my all-time favorite filmmaker, and it's funny because of the fact that I am somebody who very much, to a certain extent, as much as I love Jaws, as much as I love Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Indiana Jones movies, as much as I love E.T. and Jurassic Park, I think his work I think I'm much more, I don't know if I would say I'm more of a fan of his work in the past 30 years since Schindler's List, but I think it resonates more with me than those movies, as much as I love those movies. And I've been saying it since the 2000s, basically. And he is by far one of the best science fiction filmmakers we've ever seen.
So I'll go the exact opposite route of what you just said. I find everything up until Jurassic Park to have a sense of wonder to it. Once he got and hit Schindler's List, everything all of a sudden became more grounded and a lot less fun. And even movies like, you have one of the greatest sci-fi directors, action movie, Spielberg can do anything and do it extremely well. But then you have him having Tom Hanks trying to seek out, Leo DiCaprio as a criminal, and I'm like, how is this the same guy that directed Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Yeah.
So I understand your view that once he became more grounded, there's a lot of his personality in those films and a lot of his concerns with the world. As far as I go, outside of this particular movie that we're going to discuss, which I think is great, I find I'm a lot more fascinated with his 70s and 80s stuff.
And I think that's fair. That's completely fair. And I mean, look, I still adore watching those movies. I do. And absolutely continue to be amazed whenever I watch those movies over and over again. It is just fantastic seeing what he was able to do. I think for me, and I mean, I think it just kind of goes with my sensibilities I think it kind of just goes with my sensibilities and my emotions since I've been an adult. where it's like, yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said about like Catch Me If You Can, and The Terminal, which is kind of a light and entertaining movie, but it's still grounded in some, it's still grounded in some seriousness and stuff like that. But like I love, I guess what I want to say is I love the way he's pivoted to being one filmmaker when he was younger to being a completely different filmmaker when he's, since at a certain point. And I think he's done it largely successfully. I think that's basically what I want to say. I think that's basically where it comes from when it comes to that.
Sure. I can respect that, sure.
So, think about his two. Whenever Spielberg makes two movies in a year, it's always kind of fascinating to see how they go. He made this and Munich in truly a calendar year. Like they announced this was getting made for summer of 2005 in like November of 2004.
Oh, wow.
And then as this was coming out, he was getting ready to film Munich. And it is extraordinary the fact that he was able to make those two movies in a year. And both of them are fantastic. Like, I had gone, admittedly, in thinking about War of the Worlds, I've kind of gone a little bit further. I've kind of gone down on my view of it. Not necessarily because of the fact that I think it's a poor movie, because I don't. I think it's a fantastic movie. But just because of the fact that it's like, do I really want to put it that high? But rewatching it for this discussion, I'm like, yeah, this movie's still got the goods. And this is written by David Koepp, a collaborator on the first two Jurassic Parks. He also did Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull for Spielberg. And, they did a really terrific job with adapting this story. And the thing is, this asks us, it's funny because of the fact that I'm gonna say something about the last film we're gonna talk about in terms of these adaptations, and it goes to suspension of disbelief in terms of how it casts its lead character. The wild thing about this movie is Tom Cruise by this point is one of the biggest movie stars in the world, and still one of the biggest movie stars in the world. And yet I very much believe him as an everyman in this movie.
You know why it works for me with him? Because he's kind of a dick in real life, and he's a dick in this movie. He's a dick in this.
Yeah.
You know, he's playing at the beginning of this film when he's basically flipping the guy off about work hours or whatever, and then he goes back and his wife's there saying, "Hey, you're supposed to be here for the kids. He's not a great dad. He's got a freaking car engine in his kitchen."
Yeah. No, I mean there's so much there's so much we could read into this is one of those films that would be fascinating to look at in the prism of him being a Scientologist, and not necessarily in a good way for him. I think the Mission Impossible movies, especially the last few, kind of fit in that perspective as well. But no, this one really, like, dude, you're telling on yourself in a lot of ways in this one, because no, that is the thing that's wild about his character in this movie. It's like he is such a terrible father in this movie.
I have to say this. He tries to feed his daughter a peanut butter sandwich and she says, "I can't eat this. I'm allergic to peanut butter." And he actually says, "How long has that been?" And I think the son is the one who says, "Since she was born." And then, instead of having a caring reaction, he takes the open-faced peanut butter sandwich
and throws it against the
throws it
window.
out the window,
Yeah.
and it sticks to the window as a reminder of what a dick he is.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, it's like he asked his son to clear out everything from the refrigerator, but we already know there's nothing in the refrigerator but like condiments. It's like this is the stereotypical divorced dad, like on the big screen. Like every cliche you have about divorced dads who are kind of estranged from their children and don't really pay attention to them when they have visitation rights is on screen for this movie. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
But because it's Tom Cruise, and because it's Tom Cruise who, in Risky Business, his first fucking movie, his first really big movie, was a dick as a character, and he's always played a dick pretty much. He's always played a character with that edge. All the cliches don't seem so much as cliche because it's Tom Cruise being a dick as a dad, a terrible dad. So I can look past that. You know, this is, you know, you live in an entertainment world where writers rely so much on tropes and so much on lazy cliches, but here they're all grounded because it's Tom Cruise. And the first thing you do is see him blowing off some guy who's a union rep or a boss or whatever at his job. That's our introduction to Tom Cruise in this movie. Keep in mind, this is supposed to be the guy who we're rooting for to survive until the end.
Well, and the thing is, it's like you also, let's not forget the Spielberg aspect of this, because I mean, obviously we know his complicated relationships with his parents by this point. I mean, The Fabelmans is 3 years old now, and I mean, even before that, we knew he had such a complicated relationship with parents. This is very much in that vein, and it's hard not to, in a way, it's hard not to liken Cruise's character Ray in this movie to Roy Neary, the Dreyfus character in Close Encounters, because
that's exactly what I thought while I was watching this too. 100%.
Because Dreyfus is somebody who completely abandons his family for this obsession.
100%.
And like it takes him over. Now, you know, the thing that is wild about Ray in this movie is that he never, to a certain, yes, he keeps his children alive as long as he can, but at the same time, it's not because he necessarily gets better at being a parent. That's one of the things that's kind of amazing about this. He doesn't really become a better parent in this. He just takes care of them as best as he can.
I think the turning point for his character, and this is where I started to say, okay, well now he's realizing the situation here. He's realizing how dire this is. He's realizing how crazy this is the scene at the docks when they're trying to get on the boat.
Yeah, yeah.
And he meets that lady and a kid, and they're only in that one scene. You don't see them earlier.
Yeah.
And apparently he knows her, and he's meeting her kid. And he's like, I'm going to try to get you on the boat because I'm definitely getting me and my family on there, right?
Yeah.
And that's the first point where you see him actually caring for somebody who's really not him.
Well, and you also see as the panic starts to set in, he also sees Robbie try to help other people onto the boat, the ferry, as the ferry's trying to take off. And I agree with you. I think that is a turning point, but at the same time, it's like, and look, I mean, he does what he can for kids. I mean, as just about anybody would in that extraordinary circumstance that we're watching in the movie. But the fact of the matter is, he doesn't necessarily, it basically is a matter of survival of the fittest. It's not necessarily like, we don't really see a shift in him. Like, he's still very much, you have to pay attention to me, without really, it's not until Robbie starts to follow the military that he really starts to get to a point where he starts to show any respect in his kids as individual people.
But even there, I will counteract what you just said by, hey, Dakota Fanning, stay by this tree while I go get your brother. And then he's tied between trying to get the brother not to run into an all-out battle scene in a war.
Yeah.
Versus some other couple who comes along and thinks that she's been abandoned, and they try to take her away.
I will say that's honestly one of the most terrifying moments in the entire film, because that couple is not paying attention to what she's saying at all. Like, she is saying, my father's right there. My father's right there. My father's right there. Leave me alone. He wants me to be right here. And they're like, no, come with us, come with us, come with us. They're not listening. He's starting, I will grant you, he is starting to listen to his children for the first time by that point. But he is, and they are not, and that is the disparity. But that is one of the most terrifying moments, because of the fact that these people, everybody's trying to survive. Look, you understand, everybody's just trying to survive this situation. But at the same time, it's like nobody is also, you also have people who are not paying attention to what's around them. And I think that is, they're not paying attention to other people, and they're going by what they think they want other people should have, as opposed to what that other person needs. And I think that's one of the great things about that scene.
So this is where my love of George Romero came into my viewing of this film. Okay? So right from the outset, with Romero's very first zombie film, and it's been in 1,000 apocalypse films and zombie films since then. Like, there's very simple solutions to how you can combat zombies in Night of the Living Dead, right?
Yeah.
But it always comes down to, here's 7 people in a house, and they can't get coordinated, and they can't figure out how to do this as a unit,
right?
As a microcosm of society.
Mm-hmm.
So all George Romero zombie films aren't really about the zombies. They're about people's reactions to the zombies, and nobody can work together to do what they need to do, so society collapses.
Yeah.
So what's brilliant about this is, this film starts off when, first off, so you have these storms going on, and the wind is blowing toward the storms, not toward the people, right?
Yeah.
And everybody in Tom Cruise's little neighborhood is like, wow, this is really cool. Look at this lightning, right? And then you get the whole thing with the lightning starts dropping down. And even when they go and, this is like, everybody's out in the streets and everybody's walking toward this spot where this piece of ground, right? And, at one point, there's cops there, there's neighborhood people, and they're all like, oh, what do you think it is? Oh, what do you think it is? And they're all like, this is really cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until shit falls apart.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, one of these things comes out, and one of the tripods comes out, the spaceships, and all of a sudden, people are getting blasted and killed, right?
Yeah.
And that sets this where 45 minutes later in this film, you come to that scene on the dock.
Mm-hmm.
And that scene is crazy because Tom Cruise is trying to barrel through people and drive through them, and they don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And one guy pulls a gun on Tom Cruise Poor Dakota Fanning. I think she's the heart of this movie, and I will get to that in a little bit. But
Yeah.
that scene where they first get to by the docks, right? The one guy has the gun, and he's like, "Look, I just want the car," right?
Yeah.
And Tom Cruise is trying to explain to him, "Take the fucking car, but my daughter is in the car. We got to get her out before you take the car," right?
Yeah.
So then he gets his daughter out, and the son's there, and they're running to someplace, and then you hear a bullet blast because some other guy picked up Tom Cruise's gun and shoots the guy in the head who stole the car.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the human condition is so shitty that I could see all of this happening piece by piece the way it happened in this movie if this were real.
Yeah.
I could totally see that.
Well,
the reaction to 1938 was, and again, I don't know if the stuff about people committing suicide or rioting in the streets or any of that was true. That might have been hype that they used to make this sound, the Welles broadcast sound that much more, bombastic and out there. But it's the same thing only on a much larger scale in the current context now.
Well, and the thing is, it's like this is part of it's funny because of the fact that this is part of a trilogy of films in a way that Spielberg made. I mean, really, it's kind of a quartet, but he'd started Minority Report before 9/11. It's a trilogy of films that Spielberg made after 9/11, right? So Terminal, you're looking at the challenges of being an immigrant coming to America where security is elevated, and they're trying to keep them there because of the fact that they don't necessarily want them to enter the country. War of the Worlds, you get a very direct response to, this is very much capturing the anxiety of what was like on 9/11.
Of course.
And then you have Munich, which is the aftermath, and the complicated moral and political aftermath of a tragedy. And I think that's one of the things that's that's one of the things I think is so exciting about these movies in particular, and especially while the fact that he made Munich and War of the Worlds in the same year, because of the fact that it's like he took big swings from a thematic standpoint in both of them, and he wasn't just content to make movies that were going to entertain people. Like, in War of the Worlds is entertaining, it's also terrifying. And it's funny because of the fact that when I rewatched the movie a couple weeks ago, I had completely forgotten about that scene with the car where people are piling up on the car, they want to get the car, and then the aftermath, which, to your point, that somebody else and it's funny because of the fact that they're not that far from where Cruise and his children got out. Like, it's right nearby. So somebody else decided, I'm going to take this by force. This is supposed to be me. And it's just so intense that they did that the way that they did. And no, there are set pieces upon set pieces. It is the scariest. I mean, we talked about it, and I mentioned it. It's like, this is him going back to Jaws. This is the scariest movie he has directed since Jaws.
It's Jaws, 100%. And here's the thing. Like, I had forgotten when this came out until you and I started discussing it. And as soon as I started watching it, I'm like, this is all about 9/11.
Yeah.
So I told you recently in a message that I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, so, and again, we're not sure if this is truth or not, but like, all these things, the lightning strikes and then these things are coming out of the ground, right? The aliens are coming out of the ground. And I'm like, and someone says that they've probably been there. I think Tim Robbins' survivalist character might be the one. Someone else might say it too. That they think they've been down there for like tens or hundreds of thousands of years.
Somebody says it beforehand. I think it's the
It might be the reporters at the plane.
Yeah,
maybe.
I was going to say I'm pretty sure it's the reporters because of the fact that they're able to slow down the footage of them going down, so you see that the aliens are going down into the ground.
Yep.
So
yeah. Then I'm like, this is faulty. This doesn't make any sense. Like, why were these things planted here hundreds of thousands of years ago if Mars needs to take over the planet now? I'm like, that doesn't. And then, Brian, I put the 9/11 context to it, and it made perfect sense.
Yeah.
The aliens are sleeper cells.
Yes.
Sleeper cells. That's exactly why they are, and that's why they're underground. That's why they're waiting there. They're waiting for the right time, just like, Middle Eastern people, whatever, Taliban or whatever extremists put sleeper cells in other countries, basically setting them up for the right time to initiate an attack. So
and it's funny, we'll be able to talk about this more later in the year when you're back on the podcast. But no, you're absolutely right.
It makes sense then, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You look at it as an allegory.
Yeah, yep. And no, I mean that is the way you absolutely have to look at this, is as an allegory for 9/11. And the thing is, it's like you see it in Munich. Nothing happens in a vacuum, and nothing happens in a vacuum. There's always something that preceded it, and that is exactly something that you can say is the case in War of the Worlds as well. And I mean, here you don't get the opening. You get opening narration, but it's not the same type of thing as what you get in the 1950s film or in the H.G. Wells novel. And but I think what it does is it sets a particular context in the fact that we've grown so accustomed to our technological superiority that we just have kind of lost our ability to think that we're invincible. We think that we're invincible. And, it plays right into the 9/11 allegory. And
Brian, I was flying a couple weeks ago, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going from Sioux Falls, where I live, to Dallas Airport to go to Hershey, Pennsylvania, right? As I'm on the way to Dallas, my flight gets diverted to, where was it? Louisiana, Oklahoma, something like that, someplace I'd never been before, because they had a problem with all the communications wires in the tower except one.
Ooh.
So taking one flight at a time, and they started with international flights. This caused thousands of flights to be delayed, thousands of flights to be diverted, thousands of connections not to be made. Now, I was going to a Slayer concert, which I had bought tickets for like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I made my connection, right? Mm-hmm. Thousands of people did not. So really, the thing is, we think we're invincible with technology until it fails.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh my God, now I am at the mercies of the technological gods, and I'm stuck, and I'm not invincible, right? And, the thing with this movie is and again, it's not subtle when you see Tom Cruise walks out the next day and the reporters are scavenging a plane that crashed, right? Yeah. It's 9/11 right there for you. Crashed into the houses, right? And then
his ex-wife's house, no less. I wonder how that conversation went.
It was. And it's funny because I think that the lady reporter is the one who said, "Oh, were you on the plane?"
Yeah.
And he said, Tom Cruise says no, and she's like, "Too bad. That would have been better for the story."
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. But
it's terrifying, and it's fascinating, and it's Spielberg doing what Spielberg does best.
And the thing is, it's like you mentioned Tim Robbins. He basically is a prepper in this. He is the paranoid guy who's basically prepared for this his entire life, his entire adult life, right? And I mean, this is another just absolutely intense scene because at the start he seems like somebody who, okay, this is a good person to be around. But not necessarily. And he has a lot of thoughts. There are some things he knows about these people, these aliens, that is helpful, but he's also got several screws loose too. And that is one of the most, you think back to Saving Private Ryan. The scene where Barry Pepper's character gets killed by the Nazi soldier in hand-to-hand combat. It's one of the most excruciating scenes in that entire movie.
Oh yeah.
And you look at what Ray has to do to Robin's character in this movie, and it's funny because of the fact that it had been a while since I'd seen this movie. There's a lot I had forgotten. One of the things I love about this, they bring up the red weed in the 50s movie. And rightfully, look, it's a great visual for a Technicolor movie. It's fantastic.
Sure. Yeah.
And, I was waiting for it to really be brought up in the book, because of the fact that it's like, did they go for the same context for why it's red as Spielberg did? And the way that Spielberg contextualizes it is basically red because that is the Martians killing the humans and draining the humans of their blood.
Yep.
And again, it's like, holy shit, it's insane how hard Spielberg went with horror in this movie. It's like, oh my
think
God.
about this. At the beginning, after the first tripod comes out of the ground and they all start running away from it, right? Someone behind Tom Cruise, some poor woman gets blasted, atomized, and her ashes end up all over him. And you can't do any more 9/11 than that.
No, and it's even scarier because of the fact that you know the context of why those ashes where those ashes came from. They didn't just come from collapsing buildings. They came from a human being.
And then he throws himself into the house and he slams himself on the floor and slides into the fridge, and his kids are looking at him, and you could see how terrified Ray is at this point.
Yeah. It is a fantastic performance by Tom Cruise. It's probably one of his best performances. This movie catches. Oh my God, there's just so much that's great about this movie. This movie is. I think the Orson Welles radio play is just a step above it in terms of pure anxiety inducing, but this is not far off from that.
I don't think this works as well though if you don't have like Dakota Fanning as his daughter.
No,
Dakota Fanning. And again, we talked, you and I, a couple of years ago, and on a flight, mind you, talking about planes, we talked about, because I had watched The Watchers, that Shyamalan's daughter's movie there. And I wasn't very impressed, but she's still very good in it. That was bad to say about her. But she was one of those character actors, child actors rather, just dialed in, and she really knew how to act and sell. And she's the heart of this movie, Ryan.
Yeah.
She's absolutely, without her performance, I don't think this film is, even if you have all the other elements to play, I don't think it's nearly as good as it is, because she grounds it for me. I'm like, this poor terrified kid. Every time Tom Cruise is around, someone's trying to drag her off or, whatever.
No, and one of my favorite parts of Ray just being an absolutely awful parent in this is the fact that, like, he's trying to, Robbie's able to calm her down when they're in the somebody's trying. He's able to calm her down when she's freaking out in the van.
Yes.
And then Robbie takes the wheel from Ray, and then Ray tries it, and it just does not work at all. He doesn't understand it at all.
When they're in the basement with Tim Robbins, she wants him to sing her a lullaby to put her to sleep, and he doesn't know a lullaby.
Yeah, and I can't. What is the song that he chooses?
I can't remember the song, but he turns it into
it's hilarious. But no, this is such a good. This is such a good movie. No, it's not entertaining in the same way Jaws is, or the Indiana Jones movies are, or Jurassic Park is, but it is. It knows exactly which buttons to push, and it is. It shows that even if his instincts are to go darker, or to go more serious as a filmmaker, his instincts in terms of how to draw an audience into a story are still very much on point in this one.
I did have one question for you before we wrap this up and move on to the disaster that's about to come.
Yeah.
The one criticism I kept reading about this is Robbie getting back and being alive at the end. Now, here's why I didn't mind that. That's the person who escaped the towers, and you find out that September 12th you reunited with his family.
Yeah.
That's how I did that.
Yeah.
That's definitely someone, because I remember September 11th like it was yesterday. Like, I didn't have anybody in the city or in the towers at that time, but I heard plenty of stories of people that I knew who had people in the towers. And some of them got out, and they were like, oh my God, thank God my friend or my brother or my father, whatever, got out, you know? But and then there were those people that didn't. I took that as, hey, Robbie's the kid that escaped beyond all expectations, got out of the tower, and he's the one who got home.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason I think a big part of the reason that was so I think part of the reason that was so out of left field for people and why it didn't necessarily resonate with some people was because of the fact that the last time we saw him in the movie, like he was going up towards an area where a big fireball was starting. And so it's like, how the heck is he survive that? But no, I mean, ultimately the fact, I think the logic you use and why it makes sense is perfectly sound. And, I think the fact of the matter is it's a well-earned wrap up to their arc because of the fact that it kind of shows Ray that his son can take care of himself more than he probably gives him crap for.
Yeah.
So that leads us to
the main event.
The main event, and the film that it's funny. The film that did kind of inspire this idea for this discussion, the 2025 adaptation of War of the Worlds starring Ice Cube. Now, we talked about suspension of disbelief when it came to casting lead characters and how pleasantly surprising it was to buy Tom Cruise as the everyman in Steven Spielberg's film. There's nothing in this film that makes me believe that Ice Cube is a security analyst who doesn't believe in conspiracy theories about the government. Which I know he does believe in real life. And so, and the thing is, it's like, I've enjoyed Ice Cube as a screen presence over the years. I think he's had potential as a screen presence. boy, is this not it.
Hey, look, back in March when I was in Hollywood and I walked down the Hollywood Hall of Fame and I was taking shots of everything, film of everything with my GoPro, I took a shot of his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I love Ice Cube as a rapper.
Yes.
As a film presence, he's kind of Ice Cube. He's just, and they take the Ice Cube character, and you can spin it, and it's normally best when they spin it because like his stuff in 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street is hysterical.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they take his character and they spin it to a logical conclusion.
Yeah.
This guy's an asshole.
He's and the thing is, part of the reason I don't believe him not being a conspiracy theorist is because he is the most controlling piece of shit father. Like he uses his position in the security apparatus to spy on his children and know exactly where they are at all times. And it's like, and here's the one thing I will say about this movie that in a somewhat positive vein, there's not much, but I will say this. As an adaptation of the material for the modern age where technology is such a strong presence in our lives, and the desire for bigger and bigger security apparatuses and all that is basically the dominating force of a lot of our technological development over the years. This isn't a horrible idea for an adaptation of this story. I think it's a sound one. It's just the execution that is just absolutely dreadful.
Yes, the concept can work, and then they went and found it to make it not work in every single other element in the production.
And it's not helped by the fact that it was shot during COVID. Because
no, clearly shot. Oh.
And I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like, look, really, what? Because it's basically, this is what, 90 minutes or so. It's not that long. It's
about 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's about 90 minutes. It's basically 90 minutes of Ice Cube in front of a Zoom, in front of a webcam. That's basically what it is. And people are in front of webcams. People have Zoom Teams meetings and all that stuff. And it's like, what? No. This is not right. And a big part of the reason that it doesn't work is because it really does. It blunts the impact of when the aliens start to actually attack, because of the fact that we don't really get a sense of the destruction just watching video footage of, like, video footage of it on a screen. Like, because we don't have that grounded presence that we had in the 53 or the Spielberg film, or even hell, the freaking Orson Welles version, so much of that is missing. And it's like, that is, and yeah, you've got Eva Longoria as one of the kind of scientists who is trying to figure things out about it, but at the same time, the conceit just does not work whatsoever.
So here's the thing, right? Ice Cube rolls into work, and we're told it's a Sunday. Now, there's nobody else in the clearly green screen background that he is in front of.
Yeah.
Right? So we're being told that it's a Sunday. This is the building that houses this huge program where basically Ice Cube can spy on anybody in America,
Yeah.
right? And this guy is supposed to be our hero. So, fundamentally, this film was on the wrong foot from the very beginning.
Yep.
I'm supposed to look at this guy and think, oh, this is not Big Brother. This is someone who's actually looking out for me and trying to help me, while he's spying on his daughter, who he attacks for having a muffin. And then we get an inside shot of her refrigerator, which he's spying on a goddamn refrigerator, Brian.
Yeah.
And criticizing what she has in her fridge.
Yeah.
Then we go on to this fact where he wipes out his son's video game because his son should be working according to him, but his son says something like on the cutting edge of technology, being about a video game entrepreneur or something like that. Whatever it is, it's just so the whole setup is terrible because I don't like Ice Cube's character from the very beginning.
No.
Right? They don't try to, I guess technically they try to. Like, he is so invested in doing the wrong things, not only with his own family, but with government technology, right?
Yep.
That basically, I think that when he starts to talk to his daughter, who's got a piece of rebar through her leg. Now let's remember, his daughter is like 8 or 9 months pregnant at this point, right?
Yeah.
And he's talking to her, and he's trying to get her to some place where she's got this piece of rebar, get her to a hospital or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't even go into all the technology. Well, whatever. Anyway, the thing is, he then starts to say, the daughter's boyfriend, who's the father of the kid she's having, basically blurted it out about them having a baby shower that he doesn't know that Ice Cube wasn't invited to. I don't know how Ice Cube doesn't know he's not invited to this, or he's not aware of this party, because he seems to be involved in every single aspect of his daughter's life.
Yeah.
He knows everything about her, but he doesn't know this. So then, while she's got this piece of rebar and she's sweating and she's pregnant and she may die, he says, I don't blame you for not inviting me to the party. And she's like, really? Now, Dad? Like, this is the time for this? I'm dying here. And then later on, he starts to write a letter to his kid about how tough it is to be a parent. He's learned nothing by the end of this film.
Yeah. No, he's learned. No, I mean, I was saying, I'll admit I was probably a bit off base when I said that Ray in the Spielberg film didn't learn anything as a parent throughout the movie. He does actually, but yeah, Ice Cube learns less than nothing. Like he learns negative nothing. Like he doesn't have the slightest clue how to be a parent to anybody.
So anyway, the concept about this film is that the aliens landed here in the 1940s or 50s, I guess, by Area 51, and they came for, I can't even say this with a straight face, Brian, they came for our data.
Yeah.
And they're coming back for our data. So all these attacks on these big cities are just distractions so they can go and drain our data and basically shut down Facebook.
Which again is not, I mean, there's a part of me that wouldn't hate that. I mean, Facebook is a cesspool. I mean, all social media is a cesspool. There's a part of me that wouldn't hate that. I'd almost welcome it. But no, I mean, well, it's wild because of the fact, the idea that they landed in the 40s and 50s and that's what they were looking at when we didn't have like even 100th of the infrastructure that we do now. Yeah, that's one of the wild things. Now, again, I think it's not a, and the fact of the matter is, it's like, yeah, in the Spielberg film as well as the Byron Haskins film, it's, like, it's basically the common cold is essentially what gets them. in this one, it's a computer virus that is uploaded into, that Ice Cube has to upload in order to get them, in order to infect them.
But it's more complicated than that, because at first it's just a computer code, and then that doesn't work because now there's a biological element to these things.
Yeah.
So Ice Cube is the luckiest parent in the world and the luckiest government official, because not only does he have 2 kids who hate him because he spies on them all the time, but they happen to be perfectly suited for what he needs to stop this thing.
Oh,
So
and
we
we haven't talked about the fact that the son is a master, is basically a hacker who, a notorious hacker who Ice Cube has been spying, who Ice Cube has been trying to get for the government for however knows how long. And he has a hacker collective. I guess it's kind of sort of supposed to be anonymous, but whatever. But
none of this makes any sense.
No.
So he happens to have a daughter who has some kind of biological thing that's going to. By the way, let's just talk about how they gloss over the fact that she's basically cured cancer with this cannibal code. They don't even really make a big deal about that at all. So she's cured cancer, and she has this cannibal code that she needs to send on some kind of thing, which will connect with the computer code that the son gave him.
Yeah.
So the hacker son and the biologist daughter have now saved the world by way of Ice Cube.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
And we mustn't forget that the daughter is going out with an Amazon driver who supplies the drone that is supposedly going to get the USB port to drive to Ice Cube.
Yes, so one of the huge criticisms of this thing is it's an Amazon movie. It was made by Universal, but Amazon is the one that put it out. And Amazon is basically making this a huge Amazon commercial.
For their Amazon drones, yes.
Yes, which is great because once the daughter's boyfriend shows up to the place where the daughter is with the rebar, and she's pulled the rebar out of her own leg, and Ice Cube's worried she's going to bleed out to death, I swear to God, it's unbelievable. The son-in-law, whatever he is, pulls out packing tape and pulls it tight, and you hear it zip, and he goes, "Don't worry, I'm an expert."
Yeah.
Expert at what? Packing boxes? Expert at saving lives? How many times have you done this with people that are about to bleed out, buddy? Because I'm sure this is the first time. And then my favorite part is the drone gets shot down and ends up on its back, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
But there's video of a homeless person across the street, right? And they're like, people in all these reviews, because I watched 1 million reviews on this and they're all hysterical. Everyone mentions the fact that, well, we'll get to it, but yeah, first they offer him, she's like, oh, I'll offer him like a year free Wi-Fi. He's homeless. What the fuck does he need Wi-Fi for?
Yeah.
How about offer him a free year at a restaurant or something, you know? So he says, oh, no, I don't trust the government. No, I'm not taking that. So then I think it's the boyfriend who says, offer him $1,000
Amazon gift card.
And then this guy who just wasn't going to put up his life in jeopardy for a year's worth of free Wi-Fi is now going to run into the street because he's going to get $1,000. I don't know how this guy. I mean, maybe the boyfriend has some kind of main line to Jeff Bezos, because I don't think that employees for Amazon can just give $1,000 cards to people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's not the case.
My favorite part of that whole scene, though, is, and this is something that all these reviews seem to miss out on, basically, when the drone flips over and you see the homeless guy in his little tent,
I think the daughter says, someone says, why don't we try calling that guy? And the daughter says something like, why don't we, how do we know he has a phone? And then the boyfriend says, everyone's got a phone. So that's pretty presumptuous to think that someone who's living on the street in a tent in a shanty village there has a cell phone. It's just, this scripting is just so off the wall. It's bizarre. It just from thing to thing. Like, and then it looks like this whole thing takes place in like 3 hours. Like the president says that we're going to war, and then like 5 seconds later, there's a clips of planes going into the air. Like, because the president said it 5 seconds ago on a Zoom call. Mm-hmm. This is all insane, Brian, and it's awful.
No, it's absurd. It truly is absurd. Like, look, I defy anyone to argue with the logic of Spielberg's movie after watching this one. It is just absolutely mind-blowing just how wrong-headed this one is. And it's like, I ended up finally relenting and watching it because of the fact that I was in line for something at Dragon Con. I'm like, no, well, I'm going to go ahead and just watch this. And, it's like, yeah, it's incompetent on, like, every level. Is just mind-blowing how, it's just mind-blowing just how wrong-headed it is in every turn.
But I just want to talk about the ending real quick, because my whole thing is that Ice Cube works for a program that can spy on everybody in America.
Yes.
Basically. But there's a super program that's even more invasive than that one, and that's when Ice Cube takes offense. How could you want to spy on people's everyday lives? This is a guy who checks his daughter's fridge camera daily. Right?
Yeah.
So he's upset about this, right? That they're going to launch this program that's even more super invasive than the super invasive program that he runs and is running throughout the course of this movie.
Right?
So at the very end, after Ice Cube and his family save the world, he's on some kind of, like a Zoom call with some guy who works for the government, one of the department of whatever. And the guy's like, well, we have a much less intrusive program now that because you saved the world in your Ice Cube, we want you to run. And Ice Cube's response now, he's taken his hacker kid, because remember, earlier in the film, the hackers were like, well, we're not helping him, he's the government.
Yeah.
And then they're like, we need immunity. So Ice Cube somehow, who is working, just comes up with some way to wipe out the records for all these people. It's just astounding how ridiculous this is. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Like, the very last line of the movie is Ice Cube turning down this job because now, hey man, you know what? I don't want to be part of people who are watching America, because now I've teamed up with my hacker son and we're watching you, the government. And this is supposed to justify things like Ice Cube hasn't learned a thing now because he's still going to be spying on people.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. How did we get from the nightmare that was the 53 version to the oppressive 9/11 allegory that was Spielberg to this? Because this thing is just, again, this thing fails on every cylinder, Brian. There is not a single thing.
Have we?
I'll agree with you on the concept, but there's not a single thing that this film does right. It's you would think that one or two things would have gone right just by virtue of playing the odds. No, this film doesn't do anything right, Brian.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't, and it borrows liberally from like so many other better movies, and it's just absolutely absurd. And now it is. It's so mind-numbing just how atrocious this movie is. And yeah, I mean, the fact that we went from the highs that we did to this when it comes to this story, it's like H.G. Wells should be turning over in his grave after this. It's like, what are we even doing? Why how does this make any sense whatsoever? But you know what? I never have to watch it again, and I'm perfectly fine with that.
No, and the good thing about this is that we've looked at 3 different versions today, 3 different movie versions, and all these versions have been different, and they've always been timely for their time. But we've seen that this film can be done 100% right in the 50s and in the early 2000s, and how wrong a same concept can be adapted.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the lesson I get out of this, because I'd like to think there was some reason that I watched the Ice Cube version.
Well, you didn't realize at the time that I was going to watch and go, you know what, that thing we did with Dracula, let's do that with War of the Worlds. And, you know, the fact of the matter is, it's like, I do like the idea of doing these type of episodes because, this is a movie podcast where it's not devoted to a particular type of film discussion. We can talk about films from a wide variety of levels. I mean, you and I have talked about a wide birth of cinema legacy as well, and you know, this and the Dracula conversation we had are just another part of that, and it was so great to go back and rewatch the 50s and the 2000 version of this, and to actually refamiliarize myself with not just Orson Welles' adaptation of it, but also to familiarize myself with H.G. Wells, his original version of his original idea for it. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Phil, and I can't wait to have more discussions like this in the future.
Brian, you know, it is always my great pleasure to be on as part of Sonic Cinema. It took us a while to get here to have me on this year, but I'll be back again, and you know, as long as we can keep talking movies, and hey, at least I got a little trash in at the end. I haven't talked trash with you in a while. So
that's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we didn't really talk about trash last year. That's kind of a surprising thing, but no, it was terrific as always, and yeah, we'll be talking a little bit more trash somewhat later on in the year. We've already kind of hinted at it in a couple of episodes. You're gonna hear, including this one, you're gonna hear a little bit more in that context later. But Phil, as always, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, my friend.
I'd like to thank Phil once again for joining me on the podcast. It's always great to talk to him. He will be back later on in the year. He is going to be joining me on one of my upcoming episodes on fascism in cinema. Have a couple more of those this year. And that is going to be it for this episode of the Sonic Cinema podcast. Thank you very much for joining me as always. And wherever you listen, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, or the YouTube channel, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can also find us at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. But you can also, more importantly, find me at www.sonic-cinema.com. Thank you very much.